Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of the Exact Cyber Education Podcast. This podcast, as you know, we will discuss, evaluate, and educate you on the topic of cybersecurity strategy, governance, risk, and compliance. I'm Dr. B, your host. In today's episode, I will discuss a strategy for you to identify critical systems in your organization, those that support your mission, and any critical services your organization provides to your stakeholders, to your customers. These steps I will discuss today will make sure that your program is objective and repeatable. Two key ingredients for a great program. So, are you ready? Well, as you know, it is imperative for an organization to identify their critical systems. That is the foundation of any risk management program. Now, although I'm talking about risk, but identifying the critical systems is imperative to anything that you do in cybersecurity. Let's say patching, right? You need to know where they are. You need to know if they exist. You need to know what patch levels they are currently. So you need to find out where exactly your systems are. So that is also the foundation for that. And if you're doing any type of audit, you need to know what systems are supporting the theme of your audit, the topic of your audit. So you need to identify. So it is important everywhere. So just a caveat to that. But today we're going to be speaking specifically to risk management program. So imagine your company investing resources to protect the wrong systems or to protect not all the systems because you failed to identify that foundation systems. So here's the big question. How do you do that exactly? One of the major guidance for the industry has been NIST, specifically NIST 837 Revision 2 publication, which is the one out today available for you, which is the Risk Management Framework, or RMF for short. NIST RMF identifies systems in the categorization phase. Categorize is defined as the system and information processed is stored and transmitted by the system based on an analysis of the impact of loss. Let me say this again. NIST RMF, the categorized phase, is defined as the system and information processed is stored and transmitted by the system based on an analysis of the impact of loss. Now, the impact of loss is one of the 4 risk factors considered during the risk assessment. The other 3 factors, by the way, is threat, vulnerability, and likelihood. So the risk assessment is leveraged for information and system categorization. The risk assessment takes us into the area of the RMF that most of us take for granted. Most subject matter experts are familiar with the RMF framework, right? There's that picture that everybody sees, that little circle or wheel of sorts, where the outer layer has the elements that categorize, select, implement, assess, authorize, and monitor. However, I want to bring your attention, your focus, to the center of the circle, where it says prepare. In the prepare phase, there's 2 elements that I want to discuss. Today's episode is not meant to be a NIST RMF class, but rather I'm taking you to some important aspects to the document. Remember, identifying the correct system is crucial for the success of your program, especially, your own. However, I still recommend doing a good read if you plan to implement the program. Well, first, task number 2, the risk management strategy. This is where you will review and take into consideration the organization's mission statement, organizational policies, organizational risk assumptions, constraints, priorities, and trade-offs. Now, this is straight out of NIST, right? So this is an essential part of the process, by the way. Before jumping in head first into the categorization of any systems, right? Not even critical, any systems. You need to understand what is important for the business, not necessarily you, right? Second, which is the task number 3, risk assessment. where it asks you to assess organization-wide and risk of the privacy, update the risk assessment results on an ongoing basis. Two key words here: assessment and organizational-wide. If an assessment is necessary, where do you actually start? So that's the crux of our podcast today, right? It says organizational-wide, but you have to start somewhere, don't you? This is what I want to speak with you today. So today, organizations are facing major challenges. We all know that. Challenges like managing data protection within the budgetary constraints, meeting the constantly evolving legal and regulatory requirements that we see, storing and managing an increased amount of personal identifiable information, PII for short, avoiding attack by external hackers with potential to risk your reputation first and foremost, but ensuring the confidentiality and intellectual property from an insider and outsider as well. Meeting the increased threat from cybercrime from inside and outside of an organization, and understanding the impact of state-sponsored cyber attack among other items, right? The list can go on, but I just call your attention to these key items. I think it captured the gist of this conversation. These are the diverse threats, right, to an organization, requiring cybersecurity to be viewed and regarded as a governance issue where effective corporate protection is a risk management strategy. And as you heard from my previous podcasts, right, this has to be from a corporate level, it has to be from a government level, it has to be founded on risk management. Otherwise, you're going to be investing a lot of tools and you're going to be chasing a lot of ghosts. It is not necessarily a waste of time, right? But money not well invested because you're treating everything equally. And that is not possible. It is a bad investment practice, right? So take the Laffer curve, right? Similar concept applies to cybersecurity. On one end, you cannot have no security. On the other end of the Laffer curve, you cannot have 100% security. So the answer is in between. The answer is a spectrum. And where do you invest? Invest exactly where you get the most bang for the buck. You need to understand where your critical systems are. So here we are again, back to that foundational question, right? So here basically bring us to another dilemma. The corporate emphasis on risk management is in conflict with the typical academic information security curriculum. So, comes the point of we have a shortage of skill sets out there, right? So, and to a degree, to some operational units as well, right? That teaches security as an absolute practice where all risks are eliminated, right? And that's what you see on courses. That's what you see even on academia. It is that absolute practice. All risks are eliminated. Here's the risk. You patch it. You're done. Not every risk, and right, can be patched because one reason or another. It is multiple, right? This ideal is not what corporations are seeking anyway, because the costs, implications, and for the simple fact that is unachievable to get 100% in 100% security. Laffer curve, same I just explained, right? The answer is somewhere in between. But as we see in training, as we see in other podcasts, as we see in academia, as we see on the news, we always think that everything can be secure. And that is not achievable whatsoever. So, to get the most mission critical systems in your organization, we'll need to start from a corporate mission or from key services your organization delivers or key revenue generating services. Either way, that's where you start. You need to understand what is important to your organization. Once identified though, investigate what systems support these services. Then you go another layer. What applications And then you go down another layer with servers. And then you go another layer with database, load balance, etc., etc. So you peel that onion, starting from that top. What is important to my CEO? What is important to my board of directors? And then you identify what systems are underneath supporting that, what applications, what network equipment, and so forth. And then you identify the critical systems to deliver what is generating revenue to your organization. And basically, bottom line is keeping you employed, right? So that's how you start. Now that you have this system list at this point, you will need to identify what potential threats your organization services is facing, such as service disruption, DDoS, exfiltration of company information, or any other specific threats. The risk could be a loss of revenue, reputational, a class action lawsuit, or any other risk. This is a simple formula to quickly identify your critical systems. Remember, the identification is from an organizational perspective rather than from your department's view. As each department, as you know, have its own agenda. Each department will have a different list of priorities and different types of risks and threats and so forth. You will need to start from the company's mission or from key services your organization delivers, or even what is important to the board. Do you have access to the board slides? Can you have access to those slides so you can understand, talk to your manager? Remember, you're not going to be able to do this by yourself. It's a team effort. You're starting from the mission. The mission is very vague, it's very broad, right? Trying to capture the spirit, not necessarily a particular services. So you can start looking, pick your local store around the corner, pick your chain store, your Target, your TJ Maxx, your Kohl's, your high-end store, and look at their mission statement. It's very broad. To detect what systems and services in there, to identify them, is not straightforward. So I don't want to make this seems to be easy. It's something that you can do on your own. You will need to talk to management. You need to understand. You need to talk to individuals, the stakeholders that are close to it, and identify those services. But that doesn't change the fact that you need to start from that. That is what is important to your organization. Therefore, that is supposed to keep you awake at night. The attack to those systems. Not only that, you also, when you invest, you need to leverage those systems. You need to say this investment is to make sure that you can deliver, ma'am, sir, CEO, CIO, right? That you need to keep this system secure to deliver on the services. Therefore, I need this investment to continue maintaining security of those systems. So you can leverage this to your advantage. Not only to your advantage, right? Common sense. That's what you start, period. So take those tips, right? And I'll have attached to this podcast a link for an ebook that I put together that summarizes in a high level what we just discussed today. But it is important. I know there's a lot of training out there. I know a lot of information out there. I know there's a lot of podcasts out there, just such as mine. However, they fail to dive in on identification, right? Even if you read NIST, even if you read an ISO 27001 and 2, you will find that it's not an applied science. It is a lot of theory. It's a lot you're supposed to do this. And that's why people get frustrated. They get the document saying, how I can implement this? What is my first actionable step? And it's kind of hard. And I want to give you that to you, right? On the next following podcast. Here's what you do. We're going to dissect the mission statement. We're going to go ahead and find out and identify the services, right? And plus, there is not one service on the mission statement. There is various services in that. But when we dissect for an example purpose, I will pick one and we're going to dive in and help you go through this process, assimilate what the spirit of this exercise is and what the spirit I'm trying to teach you here today that is. And then you're on your own, right? So keep an eye on this. Download my ebook. Take a look at it, the high-level summary of this. put some critical thoughts there. Put that thought leadership to work and see how can you help your organization today, right? Because there are some elements here that will help you advance your program today, right? So put some critical thought in there, and I'll help you throughout the steps, right? If you have any question, shoot me an email. It's right on my website. Leave a comment on the iTunes, leave a comment on my website, and I'll reply it to you. Right? So, well, this is it for now. Thank you for sticking around, listening to me. Please make sure to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes so you don't miss any future episodes. I'm glad you stopped by today. I appreciate really from the bottom of my heart. Spending the time is the most expensive currency nowadays, and you spend a lot of time here with me, so I appreciate it. So see you next time. This is Dr. B, your host. I'm out.